Hey guys, welcome to Tabletop Terrors. I am James, and this is Tim, and this is our Learn to Play D&D, our D&D Basics Video 3, Fake It Till You Make It.
Yep. So I think some people are going to find this video, and they're going to hate it. That's not for those people.
I think that especially people that play D&D now a lot are not going to like this
video. They will have two bald spots where they have grabbed and pulled out their hair.
Because they don't like us.
But this is for all of you who are like, I don't know what to do at all. My friends and I, we want to start playing. We want to do this.
So many rules. I'm not sure.
We are going to show you using one 20-sided die, how to play some bootleg D&D. In fact, we are calling this Crungeons and Cragons.
Which is weird unless you know that our last name starts with a K. Our last name is Carney, so it's not just a weird letter we put in front of it. We just want to make that clear.
Right. So this is Crungeons and Cragons. We're going to walk you through some actual play. If you want to get started after you watch video 1, you watch video 2, you don't want to watch another 6 videos and learn how to make a character and learn all that stuff. You want to just start kind of sitting around with your friends and getting into this stuff. That's why a lot of people are going to hate it, because they're going to be like, that's not how you teach people to play D&D. No. But it's how you teach people to tell a collaborative story as a foundation to eventually ease them into a more complex rule set known as Dungeons & Dragons.
Exactly. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that you actually start out this way.
I would.
But you can. The idea is it's not that complicated.
Right.
So it's worth it to... Basically, you could start out that way, but in the same session, continue on and, okay, add this in, add that in.
Sure.
But we just want to give you that basically... Listen, we're basically going to do it a little more complicated than our first video where we literally just asked each other questions.
Right.
But a little less complicated than like the full-on game.
Correct. So at the end of the last video, at the end of video 2, we talked about the different ability scores that you have. Okay? Now, without going too deep into it, you have 6 of them. Okay? And...
Okay.
I don't know how to tell. Is that okay? But all those different ability scores adjudicate the different challenges you have in the world. So, here's what we're going to do to play Crungeons and Cragons. You need one 20-sided die. Every one of your ability scores, all 6 of those that we went over, strength, dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, and constitution, all of those things, you get a +2 to whatever you roll on this die. Why? Well, there's a whole thing about the math of Dungeons & Dragons to make that just an average score. You don't have to worry about that right now. We'll worry about that later. For now, in Crungeons and Cragons, you just say, hey, I want to push that rock. Mm-hmm. What do I need to do?
So you need to roll, basically.
So a strength check.
A strength check.
Crungeons and Cragons, I get a +2.
A check is any time you need to see if you can do something.
Right.
You roll the dice anytime the outcome matters.
Yes. And if you want to remember how to... hey, can you move that? Let me check.
Exactly.
So I rolled a 12. What's 12 plus 2?
14.
14. So, on a scale from 1 to 20, how hard was it? You're the Dungeon Master. How hard was that?
It was a 10. It's not a very big rock. It's been moved a lot. So there's kind of a path for you to push it. I just made that up.
That's the whole point. This is called Fake It Till You Make It because we want to teach you the most important skill as a Dungeons & Dragons player, which is winging it. Wing it, wing it, wing it, wing it, wing it, wing it.
And to be more clear, this is how I started playing. Now, not this necessarily simply. I sat down at the table with people that knew how to play. Or at least they told me they did. I don't know if they really did.
Yeah.
But the important thing is they said, all right, you tell me what you want to do, and we'll figure the rest out. Right. Now, that doesn't work as well if you and everybody at your table has never played. So this is a better way to do it if nobody knows how to play. But
sure.
I just want to let everybody know, and I think that this was the same for you. The first time I sat down and played, I had not read all the rules, and I didn't know exactly how it worked. But I watched other people play, and then when it came to my turn, they said, all right, I mean, you know what's happening. There's a bad guy here. There's a cool thing to do there. What do you want to do? I said, all right, well, I want to run over and pull the lever to do the trapdoor. And I'm looking at all these numbers, and I have these dice, and I don't know what. And they're like, okay, make a dexterity check. which, like you said, you roll a die. The DM decides how hard it is. In this case, we're easy Crungeons and Kragons. It's a 10. It's in the middle of 1 and 20. You roll, and this is actually very special because that's a 1.
So we'll get into that in a second.
We will. That's fair.
But what I want to point out for this is, in Crungeons and Kragons, the most important thing is just telling a story. And when something occurs that, like James said, there's a chance of failure, you roll for it and see if you fail or succeed. This particular part of the video is directed exactly at all of you who've been commenting saying, when's part 3 coming out? I want to play with my friends. I want to play right now. There is more to it. We'll get there.
There's a whole bunch to it.
But when you start playing guitar, sometimes you need to just take the pick and learn how to just strum that low E string open to get a little bit of rhythm so you understand some really core basics.
Exactly.
This is getting in. So far, in all the other videos, it's been pretty concept
sort of
heavy.
Theory, really.
And the feel. Now it's like, all right, well, what do I do?
Let's do it.
Right. We're not going to make you watch another 3 videos before you actually get to start rolling dice and playing.
We are going to make you watch videos.
We will. So, remember I told you that all the abilities are +2?
Mm-hmm.
You get to pick one thing you're really good at.
Okay.
Strength, again, that's measuring physical power. Dexterity is measuring your agility. Constitution is measuring your endurance. Intelligence, measuring your reasoning and your memory, like your knowledge. Wisdom is measuring your perception and your insight. And charisma is measuring your force of personality. You get a +2 to everything except one thing. You get to pick one thing you're really good at that's a +4. This is how we do Crungeons and Kragons. Very basic. What are you super good at of those?
I would say I'm probably real quick, so my dexterity is higher. So my dexterity gets the +4.
That's it. So how do you remember the rules for Crungeons and Kragons? Everything's a +2 except my new hotness.
Just remember your dexterity is +4.
That's it. So let's talk about that lever. Let's say... and we're going to do some actual play. We're going to play some Crungeons and Kragons and show you here in a minute. But let's say that lever. Let's say that it's on like a spinning wheel or something where you got to grab it and you got to be quick. The Dungeon Master, one of the people who you decide is going to kind of be the referee that we talked about, has to decide how fast this thing's spinning and how hard it is. This is called a difficulty class or a DC. Basically, like we said, it's between 1 and 20. 20 is like super hard because you got to think. How hard is it to roll high enough for this die plus a 2 or a 4 to make a 20?
Exactly.
So 10 is right in the middle. 20 is super hard. And then you kind of dial it back from there.
And a little complicated, but DCs can be unlimited. There are certain things that are impossible. If I said I want to jump 50, 100 feet, the DC is going to be near impossible.
Like a 40 or a 50 if you want to go crazy.
Some players may be able to get that, or godlike creatures, but overall the DC can be any number, but generally 1 through 20 is a safe bet.
So, we rolled a 1 before. What does that mean?
So a 1 is a critical miss, contrasted by a 20 on the die, the highest number you can get, which is a critical hit.
Correct.
Now the important thing is, it depends on what you're rolling for, but that means you either definitely exceeded expectations with a 20,
that's the 20,
or something really went bad with a 1.
Yes.
No matter what your numbers are, even if it was dexterity and you get your +4, while it is technically a 5 on the dice, rolling a 1 signifies something bad happening.
Yes. So, to put it into video game terms, you're playing multiplayer, and you make the shot of a lifetime. I'm talking, you do something that you're going to post the replay to on social media. You rolled a 20.
You're playing Battlefield 1, and you shot the plane out of the sky with your rifle.
Right. Where it's like, what?
You're like, holy cow, you can do that, but it's near impossible. But you did it.
When you roll a 1, it is like when you see that person has this much health left, you've got them in your sights, they're running down, and you shoot and you miss. But I don't mean you miss like, oh, you turn, you shoot. It's the last bullet in your clip, and while you're reloading, they kill you. That's a critical failure or a critical miss.
Important thing about a critical failure, or a critical miss, because this is a weird one. And maybe this isn't the right time to bring this concept up.
Sure, go for it.
But it's important to note that it doesn't necessarily mean that it fails. If you're running and you try to jump, you're good at jumping. You're not going to jump and just miss the chasm. but you might barely make it and you take damage because you just hit
Sure.
the edge and you fall down and you have to make another check to see if you miss the... Basically...
You don't succeed, but it doesn't mean that you fail in the worst consequence possible.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean you fall and die.
Basically, the thing I want to say is it's sort of a spectrum of failure. It's up to you. It depends. If you roll a 1 and you're trying to hit a monster, you probably miss. But if you're rolling a 1 and it's something you do all the time, like I said, if you're just running and jumping like 5 feet, maybe you slipped and you might fall right on your face.
Sure.
But it doesn't always mean that. It could mean that you slipped, so when you jump that 5 feet, you don't have very good footing and you fall on your face.
Sure.
It's up to the GM.
In Crungeons and Kragons, I think a good rule of thumb is if you roll a 1, you fail and something bad happens.
Exactly.
If you roll a 20, you succeed and something good happens. So it's kind of like, oh man, you don't do it and this bad thing when it's a 1.
Yeah.
Or, hey, you succeed and this good thing if it's a 20. A good example of what a 1 could mean, if you want to get really nasty, is your player breaks their weapon. That's not something you want to do all the time.
Exactly.
But on a really important roll, or if this is the second one of the evening on an attack, you can kind of play up with that. So, I get a +2 to everything, but I get a +4 to the one thing I'm good at. You said dexterity.
Yeah.
Okay? Why don't we do a sample session of some Crungeons and Kragons? Are you down with that?
Okay, yeah, I'm in.
All right. Here we go. Okay. So, we're going to just do an actual... I'm going to run you through some stuff.
Okay.
So what do you want to do? What kind of a...
I was thinking we could do this. We don't have to.
Oh, sure. That's great.
Just because, basically, I mean, we don't have to read it. There's an elevator.
I don't
there's
have
a
that
goblin.
pulled up.
That's fine. You make something up. It doesn't matter. I was thinking Lost Mines of Phandelver, but then I realized that'd be a bad idea.
Well, what if we do just a really basic... What's a really popular, super easy video game thing we could do? Is Doom too weird to do? Because it's modern.
I think it should be fantasy.
Yeah. So what's I don't know enough about Skyrim.
World of Warcraft.
Okay, that's great.
Maybe.
You know what?
Skyrim's good.
Let's just do generic fantasy. I'm not even gonna... You're just a guy. Let's not even
Yeah,
worry
that's
about
fine. But what I'm saying is, if you wanted a rough idea of, the beginning of Skyrim, you don't know Skyrim.
I remember that. The gallows, right?
You're going to get your head cut off. A dragon comes. The first one in ages. You run into a keep. You then
Have
pick
to
a
pick
lock.
sides.
And you pick a lock. Maybe I should run you through Skyrim.
Okay.
It's up to you. You can
Yeah,
make
no,
something
that's
up,
actually...
But Skyrim is it's the...
Well, I think...
If you want to run it, that's fine.
Let's just make
whatever you want to do.
I
Just
just
make
want...
something
Okay,
up.
all right.
Just make sure there's a lot of stuff in there. Make sure it's a video game tutorial.
Do you think we can do it in 12 minutes?
No, but we can cut it if we go past. I think we can.
Okay. We've chosen me as the Dungeon Master for Crungeons and Kragons. So if you're sitting around the table and you're like, well, what do we do? Just choose one person who's going to kind of make up the story. How do you choose that person? Well, first of all, they got to want to do it.
Yeah, usually there's one or a few people, but usually somebody takes on the mantle. You don't draw straws. It's not a bad thing.
I'm the rudder. I'm going to guide where the story is. I'm going to set the scene. We're all going to tell the story together, but I'll come up with the kind of basic premise. Now, this is super basic, so we're not going to talk about running a campaign and the social contract and deciding all... No, we're playing Dungeons and Dragons. We're sitting down on our lunch break, and we're just like, hey, I want to just hack up some goblins or something. So...
Give me the die. It's my die.
You are. All right. James, now, what kind of character do you want to play in Crungeons and Kragons?
So
just give me a high concept.
I want to be an elf ranger that uses a bow.
Cool. Okay. I'm just making this up. And the easiest way to do this is just rip off comic books, rip off movies, rip off video games. You just need to kind of set the scene, and then everyone will start joining in and making it their own.
There's also pre-made stuff that you can run
Sure.
that you can find online. Usually, though, you have to pay for it. So, I mean, you literally do what Tim's going to do and just make it up. It doesn't matter.
Or check out our podcast encounter machine if you want some just cool free encounters.
Cool encounter, yeah.
So, you are, and this, I'm literally going to just describe kind of what's going on. I'm setting a visual picture. Just kind of do what you feel comfortable with. It's dusk. The sun is going down. You find yourself hungry. You need food. But you know that in this area, gnolls, these kind of beast men, have been raiding small villages at night. And so you don't want to run into any of them. And you hear a rustling up ahead. within 50 feet, and it's pretty loud. What do?
So I probably want to go check out what is going on. So I want to sort of, if I can, sneak up to it and try and see what it is. See if it's friend or foe first. See if it is a gnoll, and then maybe avoid it. Or if it's one and not like a pack, maybe kill him.
Totally. All right, so he wants to sneak. This seems like something that he could fail at. This seems like something that's important enough to roll for. So of my abilities, I'm going to pick dexterity because he's trying to move. He's trying to move quietly. So remember, I get a +2 to everything, but this guy gets a +4 to his dexterity. So as a dungeon master, I'm thinking, all right. Now, I haven't even decided what is actually in the bushes yet. That's the truth. I'll figure that out in a minute.
But he doesn't have to tell me that.
But I don't have to tell him that.
Oh,
he's got a plan, right. So I got to think, all right, how difficult do I want this to be? Well, this is the beginning. We're just starting out. I don't want it to be terribly difficult. I kind of want it to be right in the middle.
And you're the GM, but I'm a ranger. I'm probably used to moving around the woods. I have sort of an idea of what that might be like.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say in my mind as a dungeon master, the difficulty class, the DC of this particular thing, I'm going to make it a 13. So go ahead and roll your die. What did you get?
I got a 20, which is technically 24.
Because we added the 4. Now remember, in Crungeons and Cragons, when you roll and get a 20, you succeed and something good happens. What I'm going to say is, as you begin to walk toward the noise, you notice, and this is the good thing that happens, you notice a trap that's been set. This rudimentary trap that looks like it was made to defend this area. Okay, so you are able to avoid this trap. Maybe it's a pit trap, right? It's just this kind of crude pit trap. But in the light of the setting sun, you see that, and you're able to move around it. And as you come upon the clearing, you see that there is a halfling, a small humanoid, that is bound up, and 2 gnolls sit around a very, very dim starting campfire. Okay? So, you're absolutely silent. You're able to sneak up on them as you suggested. I want to add a rule to Crungeons and Cragons. You rolled a 20, so it's not as important. But if you come up on anything that you're like, yeah, I think my character might be good at that, and the game master agrees, you're allowed to add a +1 to your roll.
Okay.
It's that easy. In this case, you already added a +4, but you're a ranger. You described that to me. You said, I'm pretty good at moving around the forest. I would have let you add a 1.
Exactly. If it were an urban setting or somewhere else, that wouldn't have worked because I'm good at engines.
Exactly.
Forests.
I'm a good elf mechanic.
I'm really good.
I went through the vocational school in my elf tree. What do you want to do? The halfling, his eyes widen because he notices you, but the gnolls are facing a different direction. They're trying to get this fire started, and they don't notice you.
So I know that halflings like food. So I'm sure that this guy knows where the best meal can be found for the lowest amount of money, and I'm still hungry. So I am going to try to kill these gnolls. I'm going to shoot one, hopefully distract them, and then basically I'm going to try and kill them. Hopefully I'm stronger than them.
Gotcha. All right, so in Crungeons and Cragons, we're going to keep this all the same. Now, what we want to do is say, what kind of attack are you going to try to make? Are you going to try to stab him with a sword, or are you going to try to shoot him with a bow?
I'm going to use my bow. I think that I'm pretty good with bows, so.
All right. Now, in Crungeons and Cragons, if you want to hack and slash, it's strength. If you want to shoot or throw something, it's dexterity. That's it. It's that easy. So all your attacks are either going to be dexterity, they're going to be strength, and then we'll talk about spells in a different...
But it'll be the same thing where you decide what the difficulty class is.
Correct.
But in Dungeons and Dragons, sort of monsters and creatures and things you're trying to hit have a difficulty class, or what it's really called is an armor class.
Right.
Same thing. A number you have to hit in order to hit.
So these gnolls sitting there, I think they're kind of low level. So I'm going to make their difficulty class, their number you're trying to hit, let's make it a 12.
Okay.
Now, you use dexterity.
Yes.
So you're going to draw your bow back, right? Now, in Crungeons and Cragons, you can only make 1 attack per turn.
Gotcha.
Okay? So you tell me, which one of these gnolls are you going to attack?
The one on the left. So if there's one on the left, one on
Gotcha.
the right, I'm going for the one on the left.
So you don't know this, but as a dungeon master, I'm like, they're low level. So remember, 10 is just super average. 20 is super hard. I'm going to go with the 12 because these are low level. So you roll your dexterity.
So I got a 9. So
Okay.
plus 4, that's going to be 14.
Okay.
Nope, 13.
13. Yes, I can.
I pretended it was 5, yeah. No.
So that means that it's a hit. That means you draw back and... Right? So the arrow hits the gnoll. Now, in Dungeons & Dragons, there are hit points and special abilities and all that stuff. For me, we're not going to get into all that right now.
It's Crunches and Kragons.
It's Crunches and Kragons. You just say, okay, that gnoll is dead. But the other one turns around and says, hey, you killed my buddy.
And I say, oh, bananas, you can talk, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I thought you were a dog man. And so now combat happens.
So that was my turn.
So now it's the monster's turn. This in Dungeons & Dragons is called initiative. Everyone gets a turn. Even the tied-up halfling technically would get a turn to maybe try to escape or do that kind of thing. So you roll for initiative, right? So go ahead and roll.
13.
Okay? To keep it super simple, if you want to add dexterity to this, you can.
That's what you do in D&D.
Or you could just do straight chance. You got a 13,
The Nola got a 16.
a 16. So that means in the order, and the halfling got an 8. So keeping it simple and modified, it's that easy. Knowles, James, what's your character's name? We're never going to remember it.
No, we are. You know why?
Why?
My name's Joe Bilton.
Okay, perfect. James, Joe Bilton, and Harry the Halfling. And so we continue to do this. So, in Crunches and Kragons, it's the Gnoll's turn. I'm going to attack you, but I'm going to use my strength.
So you're going to run at me,
Yep.
hit me.
How do you play? What do I do? Everyone gets to move a little bit and attack. How far? Well, you guys decide. Decide that in your group. About 30 feet is the average in a Dungeons & Dragons game. So you just kind of think about it. Use your imagination.
And we especially are playing what's called Theater of the Mind, where
Right.
we're not playing on a mat where it's like, this is 30 feet. You're like, you might say, I'm roughly 20 feet from the knoll, so I can make it. Or he can make it to me, whatever.
All right, so in Crunches and Kragons, you still have to have this thing called hit points. So, what you do is you get to pick one of these dice to be your life, basically. The lower the die, the less hit points you have. So, the best way to do this is to think, okay, well, how's my constitution? If you got a lower constitution, you're going to want to pick this D4. If you got a higher one, you could pick all the way up to like a D12. Again, just decide how strong your character is, how powerful you are. For you, James, this is going to be your hit points. What do you want to do?
I think that a D8 makes sense for my character.
Perfect.
That's
so you
that
want to
one.
grab... Now, put it on the 8.
Okay. I have
Anytime
8.
you get hit, you put it down a number. So for these gnolls, they're going to be pretty weak. We're going to do a D6, actually. We're going to do a D4.
Now, real quick, have we talked about dice?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the last video, we
making
did it. We did a hole and we put pictures of them.
Awesome.
So what does that mean? That means that the other gnoll is just dead, because I wanted to show you that, okay, that kind of stuff can happen. You can narratively decide to do that. This guy, we're going to put on the 4. Okay? That means that every time he gets hit, I just put it to the 3, and then the 2, and then dead, and that's it.
Equally, you could write these numbers down. It's just easier to do the dice because you don't have to really
Sure.
do anything. You just move it, and you don't even need a pen and paper, basically, to do exactly what we're doing.
Exactly. And again, in Dungeons and Dragons, there are things called hit dice and so on.
All
We're
kinds.
going to get into that, but this is the fake it till you make it bootleg
Play with your
Crunches and
friends.
Dragons. Yeah,
Get
we
the
just want to
idea.
sit around and start doing this. We don't want to have to read the whole book. We don't have to watch another 7 videos. So the gnoll has 4 hit points. Now, he charges at you. Remember, he's going to use this rusted scimitar, right? So the gnoll gets to roll, and he's really good at strength. So my +4 is in strength. So,
9 and 4, which is 13, as we remember from last time.
all right. Now, you're a level 1 character. You're kind of like, eh. So we're going to make it about a 12 to hit you too.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, because it's between 10 and 20. Now in the game, there's armor class and there's all the things.
There's the armor you're wearing, how fast you move. It's very simple, but for even more simplicity, 12 hits me.
Right around this point, you're going to start thinking of your own rules. That's awesome. That's called homebrewing. And if you're like, well, why don't I do this and this? And the idea of this video is to get the vampire of curiosity just...
I want to make something very clear to you guys. Now, here's the thing. This is beautiful. We've made all of this up just now.
Oh, yeah, we didn't plan
Tim has been thinking about it maybe a little bit before. I didn't know about it. But, like, literally, as things are coming up, he's making it up. So this is a complete homebrew. This is not a thing that we've really done before. I just want to make that clear that we're literally faking this until we make it because this is cool. I'm, like, really curious what this halfling's all about, and I want to get some food.
Right.
And that's D&D, man.
That's it.
That's role-playing.
And when you finish this, you're like, everything worked out well, except when we, used your hit points, you were a little low. So let's make it double that. Oh, and before you know it, you're playing D&D on Access.
Exactly, because there are a lot of different role-playing game systems, and this is just one we're making up that's based on D&D.
Crunges and Kragons.
So you hit me.
I did hit you.
Decide how much you hit me for.
So, to make it easy, you just turn that to a 7. You have 8 hit points. You make just one hit. Boom, boom, boom. I get to move. I get to attack. So now, it is your turn.
So I am now. He's near me.
Yeah, I'm like neck and neck. We're just got this
rusty I probably
scimitar.
Can't shoot him with the bow. Like I'm gonna have a hard time.
Yeah, you're gonna have a hard time.
I'm like, all right. So I'm gonna pull out my short sword. I'm gonna drop the bow. Short sword comes out.
Okay.
That's sort of my move. Because I'll be able to move and attack.
Sure.
So I pull out my short sword and I'm going to stab him back. Now, that's going to be strength again. Or not again. Yeah. That's going to be strength instead of dexterity. So I only get my +2. So I'm going to roll, but I only get +2 to this. And I'm shooting for 13? 12?
Yep. We're doing 13 for them.
13. So I actually rolled a 13. Or no, that's an 18. Sorry, my game science dice are wearing out. That's an 18. So with a 20 on the... or a modified 20 is what we call it. I didn't roll a 20. I hit this gnoll for 1.
Right. So you hit him for 1. And now, describe to me what it looks like.
I was about to say. So this is the part where, once you know what happens, it's not just the GM that has to come up with everything. The player can say, all right, so I drop my bow. He's getting really close. And, looking over his shoulder, I see the halfling kind of struggling around. He's probably got a gag in his mouth, but he's really concerned, and he hopes that I can save him. I can see that in his eyes. So I pull this short sword out, and as I'm drawing it, I try to slash it across the gnoll's face. Give him a cut right across sort of his snout. These weird dog creatures.
Yeah, and since you rolled so high, since you rolled an 18, which plus your +2 made it a 20, I'm going to let that happen. And in fact, you slash him so hard that I'm going to let you take an extra point of damage away.
Awesome.
So now he's at 2, and you can decide whether or not to show your players this or not, setting something up called a Dungeon Master screen, which we didn't even trouble ourselves with right now. But if you want that stuff to be secret, so you don't know how many hit points
all the rolls, the hit points, some of the notes you have on the story.
Yeah. You could just set up a pizza box. You could put a book open up, anything to hide, or they sell Dungeon Master screens. But again, this is Crunches and Kragons, so I might just do this.
Yeah, just roll the die and not tell me. A lot of the fun of the game is if I don't know exactly what what it takes to hit the monster. So I roll and I'm like, oh, I got a 13. Does that hit? Now, after enough rolls, you kind of figure it out, because if a 14 doesn't hit and a 13 does and a 12 does, you kind of know. But it's the sort of thing where it's fun to say, oh, you just barely miss. And you're like, oh, I almost got him. So that level of not knowing how exactly the number of the creature's hit points, but knowing, oh, you hit him pretty hard and he's really bleeding from his face. He may not have much time left.
He's not looking too good, stuff like that.
He's like really puts you in it without saying he has 2 hit points left. You can do that. People play that way, but I love that style of like, oh, not misinformation, but like disinformation, not telling them everything.
Right. Now it's the halfling's turn. Now for me, let's look at my abilities here, okay? I want to look. The halfling's going to try to wiggle free from the ropes. Why didn't he do that before? Well, he was afraid. There were 2 gnolls. Probably couldn't have overpowered both of them.
What are you going to do? You're going to wiggle free and they're probably just going to kill you.
Exactly. Now, they're engaged with this one dude. One of the gnolls is dead. He's going to try to wiggle free. Well, I'm looking through here. I could use dexterity, which is using that agility to try to wiggle free, or strength to try to bust open the ropes. I'm spry. I'm a wee fella. I'm going to use dexterity. So, if you were the dungeon master, what would you make the difficulty class or the DC of getting out of those ropes for this halfling?
So literally, he's asking me, and I'm going to make this up on the spot. I'm going to walk you guys through me deciding. 10 is roughly average. I imagine that these gnolls in general aren't the not cleanest, but they wouldn't worry about the maintenance of things much. They probably have some twine that they've used to tie plenty of people up. They've probably been broken out of before. Maybe they're just tied together. I would say that the difficulty is only an 8. Because this is not strong, thick silk rope that's holding you in. It's like, no. They're more, if you had broken out, they were going to kill you. It's almost like, what do you call it? Like
dirty electrician's extension cord?
Yeah, no, but I'm like, it's almost, it's not even.
Pageantry.
Yeah, like they're like, listen, we're going to tie you up so you can't literally just run away. But if you do break out, you're only a halfling. I'm just going to tie you up and not worry about you. So
It's
I would
for
say
show.
8. Yeah, lower than average. This is not strong.
So an 8?
An 8.
All right, so remember, I get a +2 to everything, but in this case, I'm actually going to change things up. Halflings are usually pretty spry, and they get bonuses to their dexterity. I'm not going to do that. My guy is a little Tyrion Lannister. Charisma's his thing. So I'm going to use my +4 for charisma. It's not going to help me right now. I tried talking my way out of it for these gnolls, but maybe they don't speak a common tongue or something like that. So here I go.
So you're only going to get a +2 to your dexterity to try to wiggle out.
And I'm trying to hit an 8 because that's what we kind of agreed on. Ooh, I rolled a 4. My +2 gives it a 6. So
you tell me I rolled the 6. And so I'm the GM here.
Yeah, because we switched just for the sake. That might be confusing. For the sake of throwing it back and forth to James and I pretended that he's the game master just for a second.
Probably he plays that.
Probably a bad idea.
We realize now.
But I would then say, yeah, I rolled a 6.
Now, like I said, maybe I didn't tell him he was shooting for an 8, but I told you guys we're in on this.
That's
together.
the thing.
That's
You're
so then I
I
tell Tim, as he's playing the halfling, I'm like, you struggle against these ropes and you can tell that there are bits and pieces maybe falling off, but even after you struggle, you can't quite get out, but you know that you're not very far off.
Yes.
And that tells him, listen, it's low DC, but you still didn't make it. You only rolled a 6.
Exactly. And then it comes back to the Gnoll's turn. Now, he's just been slashed in the face, but he's going to try to use every ounce of energy he has left. And he's going to try to run you through and end this, go and get his wounds tended to back at his tribe. So, your armor class is a 12, because we decided that between 10 and 20, that's just what we decided. Okay. So a 9.
9.
My Gnoll is strong. 10, 11, 12, 13.
So you definitely hit.
So I just hit, right? So I go to stab you. You've got leather armor. So the scimitar, this rusted scimitar, hits, but it stops it from going all the way in. So now the scimitar is kind of half stuck in your armor. Now this Gnoll is realizing that this might not be an easy fight. So he's considering running away, but he's not going to just yet. So you see a look of fear in his eyes as he's close to you, and his face is just bleeding. So that's the Gnoll's turn. It's your turn. What do you want to do?
So, I still have my short sword out. He's just tried to run me through. It didn't quite work. The rusty sword didn't really make it, but I am hurting. It certainly drew blood. Actually, I turned my 7 down to a 6 because I got hit.
Yes, you did.
So, I took one more hit point, but I'm still doing okay. I know that, I'll let this halfling out. We'll get somewhere. I'll get bandaged up, no problem. But I'm going to slash this Gnoll again. In fact, I'm going to go and I'm going to turn my sword and I'm going to try to stab him right in here. Right where
really
his
go
sort
for
of
it.
neck, but down into his heart.
Yeah, like a kill shot.
So I'm just gonna go for it. So I rolled a 12 and I get my +2 to strength, so it's gonna be 14. So I hit.
That does hit. So I'm gonna go ahead and say this particular Gnoll is scared, bleeding out. He has 2 hit points left, but again, I'm the dungeon master. I'm like, you know what? Not only did that description really sound cool, and he really put some effort and energy into it, but I want the game to kind of move to a different feel. I want to kind of go on to the scene where he gets to talk to this halfling.
Yeah, narratively, we're like, this is being drawn out.
Right. So I'm going to fudge, and you got to be careful when you do this, but it's okay to do this. I'm going to fudge the hit points, which means there are 2 left on the die, but I'm going to say, I'm going to narrate that this Gnoll is dead. And so I'm fudging, so that was such a cool description that I'm going to reward him by letting him take 2 hit points, so that Gnoll is dead now. And I'm going to say, describe to me what it looks like as that Gnoll dies.
So like I said, after slashing him and then his I imagine that his scimitar goes into me and stops, And for a moment, we stop fighting and we kind of lock eyes. And it's that moment, like you said, that the gnoll realizes, oh boy, this might have been a bad idea. And so, scimitar still in my chest. That's when I flip my short sword around and I just bring it down. Probably he's got some hide armor maybe, and it's patchwork from animals he has, he's killed and skinned. But right between where the armor meets maybe some neck armor or his helmet if he has one, it just slides right in and a sort of squishy plunge. It just goes in, and I feel the life drain from the gnoll as the sword goes in. And as he falls back, I slide it out. And, it's bloody, and the gnoll falls back.
And as this happens, you hear, well, that took you long enough. As the halfling addresses you.
And so I would probably, walk over and pull my arrow out of one of the gnolls and start sort of wiping it off. And I would say something like, well, it's much better than you did.
Well, what I lack in combat prowess, I assure you I make up with in coin. If you free me and take me to the village, protecting me along the way, I'll pay you a hefty sum.
As long as you know where to get some pretty good food, sounds good to me. And I would, sort of assessing that this halfling doesn't seem like a threat based on the fact that he was caught by two gnolls. I'm not going to really think that he's tricking me or there's a trap or anything. I'm just going to cut free his bonds and help him up.
Perfect. And he says, well then, lead the way. And as long as there's nothing else you want to do in this area, we'll take a quick break. You can get a drink, and then we'll pick up on the travel to the town.
So just as flavor, I think that as a ranger, I would put out the rest of this fire just so that it doesn't start up or cause any problems. Just being conscious of sort of the forest.
Perfect. And there you go. That is a fully made up, fully improv session of Crungeons and Kragons. So I guess we'll end real quick with a recap. I'm not expecting to go through every rule.
Yeah.
Because the point of this was to show you that the only rule that matters is fun.
Exactly.
Again, I know we're probably going to get a lot of dislikes on this video. I don't care. I wish someone would have told me this a long time ago.
Basically, what I would like to say is that your complexity level is based on how much you know the game. If you are new and everyone else knows the game, you'll probably dive right into full-on D&D, and you'll learn as you go. That's what I did.
Sure.
If one of you knows some of the rules and read a lot of it and is willing to teach everyone, maybe you'll do this, but a little more complicated. You'll use terms like armor class, and you'll roll for damage because that's a little more fun and just a little more complexity, but it's up to you. What matters is the fun and the story and the fact that you just had fun, really. That's it.
That's it. So there are pre-generated characters online for actual Dungeons & Dragons. That can also help you kind of steep yourself in it because you're holding that tax form, as we referred to it as, and you're like, okay, what?
Without necessarily knowing how to fill it out, but you can see strength, and you can see, I want to do athletics. It becomes self-explanatory.
That's it. Fake it till you make it. Over the last week, I think, I've heard at least 3 people that I really respect as role players and as like good YouTube channels, like Chris Wellham of Drop Dice, some of the other people, they basically said, we just kind of farted around rolling dice for 3 years. I didn't know the rules. Yeah. And I specifically asked Chris, I was like, was it fun? He goes, it was the most fun.
And I think that's the important thing, because I will say that what we just did was a lot of fun. I mean, we play real D&D all the time, but this was like, I am interested in, why the gnolls were there. Who's this halfling? What's the next town we're going to go to? And it doesn't matter what this is. It doesn't matter what my bow is or how much damage. It all depends on how you want to play. But if you're having fun, that's what matters. If you're really into a tactical style, you're going to have to learn more rules to get into that.
Right. But
there's nothing wrong with starting with like, hey, this is how we're going to do it.
Nah, and this will get you started this weekend. You want to hang out on Christmas and play some Crungeons and Kragons? Well, this is how you do it. So I think the pillars are, like we said, there are 6 abilities. You get a +2 to everything. But pick the one that you got some fancy mojo in. You get a +4 to that one. That's it. How many hit points do you have? Pick one of the dice. And you can just decide how tough are you. Now in D&D, Constitution plays into that and all that, and you can do that.
You get a certain amount of hit points.
Just decide, okay, basically, because in D&D this is called a hit die, where every time you level up, you get to roll one of these and add it to your hit points. We're not worried about that. Just decide with your game master, all right, am I a D4? Am I really frail? Or am I like a D12? Like a barbarian, like really strong. And so you just take that, put it on the highest denomination, or write it down. That's your hit points. All right. Then, if you want to punch or physically attack, called melee, you roll the D20 and add your strength. If you want to do ranged, you roll your dexterity. If you want to do spells, that's a little more interesting and confusing. We didn't really go over that. But different spellcasters draw their magic from different sources. So you can either choose your intelligence, your wisdom, or your charisma, depending on what you want to kind of go for.
Yeah.
And just add that and roll.
And in that case, if you're doing that, just make up what the spell does. Another thing I want to say is you heard us use some descriptions, and more or less, as long as it doesn't greatly affect the story. When I killed the gnoll, I didn't say, and as he falls down, a chest of 500 gold pieces is behind him.
Exactly.
You kind of stay within the bounds of the story, but basically I could have said anything. I could have said I chopped his head off. I could have said I lopped his leg off. And as long as the GM doesn't say, well, okay, that's a little, maybe a little too much, they can always kind of rein it in a little bit. Like, well, maybe you didn't kill him. Some people will be like, I hit him so hard I kill him. And you're like, well, no, we gotta...
Let's relax.
It's basically up to the GM to do that, but as a player, don't forget that you have... there's like an unlimited amount of things you can do. You can say whatever you want. You can make your spell be purple and shoot from your hand, but you just roll wisdom.
Right. And so the idea here is that we didn't go over this, but I'll go over it very quickly. If you decide to be the dude or dudette who's the game master, and people start throwing crazy stuff at you, the two tricks you can use are yes and or no but. Meaning, I cut off the gnoll's leg. No, but you do put a really deep gash in it. It's a compromise. Yes and is, I cut off the gnoll's leg. Yes, and your sword gets stuck. Something where it's like you kind of just, you're compromising. Something that kind of benefits, etc. So,
rather than, the important thing is that is in contrast to saying, no, that doesn't happen. Period. Like, no, do something that furthers the story in every case that you can, and that will help your pacing.
Right.
A little more complicated, but...
That is basically it. Hopefully this video was helpful. I think that I really wish someone would have sat me down and just kind of showed me this, because I would love to play Dungeons and Dragons with some of you folks. Just because the dice are important, but what's more important is just that cool thing we just made up.
Yeah.
With the halfling and the gnolls and
the story, whatever it is.
Yeah. And every time you play and wing it like this, every time you play a session of Dungeons and Dragons, you'll come up on something that you're like, I want to do that differently. Great, that's the rule you need to research.
Exactly.
Or, I really didn't like that. Great, that's the one thing you change. And as you play this and slowly kind of steep yourself in, you're prepping yourself for the next set of videos we do, which is actually digging into learning 5th edition, making characters, all that stuff. We're going to get into that, but this seemed like the next
Like
stop.
you said, you want to just make sure everybody understands that this is all it is. There's no more than this. It's just making up the story and letting chance decide certain things. That's role-playing games. That's D&D. Whatever you add sort of modularly is what makes it fun for you. Like, I want to run a mystery, or, I like really combat-heavy games. Just add that on top. Just put it right on top, and that's your game.
Yep. And the more rules and dice rolling and strategics, it's not a word, strategy you put in the game, in the role-playing realm, we call that being a crunchy system. So crunchy means the more of these specifics and rules that kind of adjudicate these situations. Rules light or narrative is when we would just even say, okay, no dice.
Yeah, you could run it completely no dice, sort of like, I think we did a little bit of that in one of the videos.
It's just make pretend, let's talk it through.
Basically,
we just decide what happens.
There are all kinds of things on that spectrum of it. Depends on what you like. I like sort of rules light, but we still roll dice for chance. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of what D&D 5th edition is.
That's it. So play some Dungeons and Dragons. Hopefully you enjoy it. If you come up on something you don't remember, you don't have to rewatch the video. Just make it up. If you come up on something you like better, homebrew it and make your own thing.
Exactly.
And this, to me, is a good stepping stone if you want to just sit around the table with some friends this weekend, roll some dice and tell some stories. This is how you do it. Get started. Is there anything else you want to go over?
I will say we're going to make more videos, but if you're like, okay, I did that, and it's going to take you another 6 weeks to make a video, so what should I do next? A good thing to do is to get the starter pack of
Starter
D&D.
box, the
Starter
Dungeons and
box.
Dragons starter box.
It comes with pre-generated characters, a little adventure to run, and as far as I know, a little rule book that's like, hey, these are the rough things.
It's all in the adventure. It's like, well, no, you're right. It's a separate.
I don't remember
rule book.
exactly,
Nope.
but basically, and it comes with dice. So it comes with literally everything you need to like really play Dungeons and Dragons in contrast to Crungeons and Kragons.
Right.
That's a great way to start, but another way would be to, just buy the player's handbook and read through it, but if you're not really that style and like you said, you want to get together, pick up that beginner box. I think it's like $20. You cannot beat that. Ask for it for Christmas.
There you go. Probably cheaper on Amazon. But yeah, check that out. And in the meantime, people ask all the time, well, what should I get? What should I get? Google D&D 5th edition basic rules, and they're free. Roll20.net has free dice rollers, so you can go there and just find their free dice rollers. So you can even play with zero monetary investment if you want to take that leap before you want to buy the starter set. Yeah. There's pre-generated characters on the Wizards of the Coast website.
Often called pre-gens. If you just type D&D pre-gens, you'll find countless.
And it has all this like rule stuff written out for you to kind of just comb through. It's really cool because all the work is done for you and you kind of just fumble your way through it. And watch live plays or actual plays. Watch Penny Arcade's, Acquisitions Incorporated games. Watch Fistful of Dice's Provokers campaign. Watch our Dragon Grin games to just kind of see how they can be so very different.
Exactly. I think that is a very good thing because you can see, they usually last a few hours, but from beginning to end, what something like a session should look like. How often you should roll, how often rules come up, how often they don't, things like that.
Yeah. Well, that's it for us this time, guys. Thanks for watching. Tell us how this goes for you. Let us know if you have any questions. And until next time, may your Crungeons and Kragons dice roll high.